Do you have any idea who I am? I donated $6 million to this hospital. I will make sure you lose your job before this shift is over.
You can do that if you want. But you are not walking through this hallway today.
Do you have any idea who I am? His voice was cold and flat. I donated $6 million to this hospital. I will make sure you lose your job before this shift is over. Mara Ellison looked at him without blinking. You can do that if you want, but you are not walking through this hallway today. He did not expect that. Nobody ever said no to Cole Voss. That was his first mistake. His second mistake was raising his hand and slap a pregnant woman. Cole Voss walked into that hospital, believing he was the most powerful man in the room. He had no idea who was already standing quietly at the far end of that hallway. He had no idea what that one moment was going to cost him. Everything. The trauma and emergency floor never slept. Monitors beeped in steady rhythms. The air smelled like antiseptic and quiet urgency. Nurses moved fast and said little. Yet because on this floor, a wasted second was a stolen life. Mara Ellison had worked this floor for 8 years. At 33, she was the one the younger nurses called when a vein collapsed. When a family broke down crying in the hallway. When a patient crashed at 2 a.m. and nobody else knew what to do. She was the calm that held everything together. She was also 7 months pregnant. Her feet hurt. Her lower back carried a dull ache that started around hour 4 of every 12-hour shift. But she never mentioned it. She simply rubbed her belly once between rooms, took a slow breath, and kept moving. None of her coworkers knew much about her life outside the hospital. She never talked about where she grew up. She never mentioned family. When people asked, she smiled and changed the subject. Nobody knew. Nobody was supposed to. Yet nobody knew that the quiet nurse checking vitals in room 7 was the foster sister of Jaewon Seo. Jaewon did not work in hospitals. He did not attend charity dinners or appear in any business magazine. His name was not in any police database. He moved through the city like a current beneath still water, silent and invisible, until the moment he decided to move. He was the most feared man in the city's underground. His organization had no official name. His face appeared in no police record. He had kept that world completely away from Mara for years, not because he was ashamed of her, but because she had asked him to. Let me be normal, Jay, she had told him when they were teenagers. Let me just be a person. He had honored that, always. But peace has enemies. The double doors at the end of the hallway slammed open at 3:47 p.m. Yet every head on the floor turned. The man walking through them wore a charcoal black suit that cost more than most nurses made in a full year. His name was Cole Voss. He was 47 years old, the founder of a private equity firm, and a hedge fund manager who moved hundreds of millions of dollars. He was also a man who had never once heard the word no without making someone pay for it. Behind him, a nervous assistant pressed a folded cloth against Cole's left hand. A small cut, the kind you get from a broken glass at a restaurant, the kind that needed a bandage, not a trauma floor. Cole did not care about that. He scanned the floor like he owned it, which in his mind, he nearly did. His last donation had funded the hospital's new neurology wing. He had the framed letter from the board to prove it. I need a doctor now. His voice cut straight over the monitor sounds. Not a student, a real one. A junior attending physician named Dr. Sean Alibi walked toward him quickly, hands out, voice low. Sir, this is the trauma and emergency floor, Dr. Alibi said. Your assistant's injury is minor. The main emergency desk is 2 floors down. Cole grabbed his coat and shoved him sideways. The whole floor stopped breathing. Cole kept walking. He was heading toward room 4. His eyes were scanning for an empty bed, a nurse he could order around, anyone who would just do what he said. Inside room 4, a patient was recovering from brain surgery. He had been out of the operating room for less than 12 hours. He could not be moved. He could not be disturbed. Mara stepped out of room 7. She did not rush. She did not raise her voice. Yet she just stepped out and stood in his path. Cole stopped walking. His jaw tightened. He looked at her the way certain men look at people they have already decided do not matter, like she was furniture that had somehow started talking. Do you know who I am? His voice dropped into something uglier. I donated $6 million to this building. I will have your badge pulled before your shift ends. That is your right, Mara said. She did not move. But you are still not coming through this hallway. Something shifted in his face. The anger cracked, and something colder came through. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a matte black business card case. He flipped it open and held it toward Dr. Alibi, who had pressed himself against the wall. "Name a number," Cole said. "Whatever it takes to move one of these patients to another floor." "I need this bed." Dr. Allaby's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Mara spoke instead. "Put that away." Her voice did not shake once. "Money does not change which patients are safe to move. The patient in room 4 had brain surgery less than 12 hours ago. He cannot be moved for a hand cut." Cole turned to her slowly, the card case still open in his hand. "You are a nurse," he said, and the way he said it made it sound like an insult. "You do not make decisions on this floor." "I do," Mara said. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then Cole launched into it, loud and ugly and relentless. He called her incompetent. He said her scrubs looked like they came from a donation bin. He talked about her education, her salary, her place. He said things that made Nurse Tess at the station look down at the floor. He said things that made Dr. Alibi press himself further into the wall. Mara absorbed every word without flinching. Then she turned toward the wall phone to call security. That was when Cole hit her. The sound of it was wrong. Too sharp for a hospital, too loud. It split the quiet of the floor like something breaking that was never supposed to break. His palm connected with the side of her face with full force. Her head snapped sideways. The clipboard in her hand dropped and hit the floor. She stumbled back, one shoulder catching the edge of the nursing station counter. Her hands flew instantly to her belly, both of them wrapping around it, protecting it. She did not fall, but her eyes closed for 1 second. And that 1 second said everything. The floor went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind that follows something that cannot be taken back. Nurse Tess stood frozen at her station, both hands pressed to her mouth. Dr. Alibi had gone pale. The security guard near the elevator had his hand on his radio, but had not moved. Nobody had moved. It was like the air had been pulled out of the entire building. Cole straightened his jacket cuffs. "Maybe now you understand how this works," he said. Down the hallway near the exit stairwell, a tall man in a black coat stood with his hands in his pockets. He had not moved since the doors opened. He had watched everything. The shove, the threats, the slap, the way Mara's hands went straight to her belly. He had a tattoo on the left side of his neck, a black eagle, one wing open. He did not raise his voice. He did not reach for anything. He took out his phone, typed 5 words, and sent them. Then he walked out the side door. Now his name was Jaewon Seo, and Cole Voss had just made the worst decision of his life. The floor was still silent. Nobody had moved. Nobody had spoken. The only sounds were the steady beeping of the monitors and the rain hitting the windows outside. Cole stood exactly where he had been. He did not look sorry. He did not look worried. He straightened his jacket cuffs slowly and looked around the floor like he was waiting for someone to come and apologize to him. Nurse Tess still had both hands pressed to her mouth. Dr. Aliby was still against the wall. The security guard near the elevator still had not moved. Every single person on that floor had watched Cole Voss slap a pregnant woman across the face, and not one of them had done anything. Mara steadied herself against the nursing station counter. Her cheek burned. When her hands were still on her belly, she took one slow breath, then another. She stood up straight and reached for the wall phone to call security. Dr. Raymond Webb arrived 90 seconds later. He was the hospital medical director. He was 59 years old, with silver hair and a reputation for handling difficult situations calmly. He walked through the double doors, took one look around the floor, and made his decision in under 3 seconds. He chose wrong. "Mr. Voss." Dr. Webb moved toward Cole with his hand stretched out, his voice smooth and warm. "I am so sorry for this. Let us get you taken care of right away." Mara stared at him. He did not look at her. Not once. Cole rolled his shoulders back. "Your nurse was aggressive and blocked me from getting medical attention. I had to defend myself." Dr. Webb nodded slowly, like he was hearing something completely reasonable. He did not check the security cameras. He did not ask the witnesses. He did not look at the red mark spreading across the face of the pregnant woman standing 10 feet away from him. He turned to Mara, and his voice went flat. "I am going to have to let you go," he said. "Effective immediately, please surrender your badge and clear your locker." The shock hit her somewhere deep in her chest. Not because of the words. She had half expected the words the moment Dr. Webb walked through that door and did not check on her first. What hit her was the witnesses. The nurses, the doctors, the security guards, all of them had watched Cole Voss slap a pregnant woman across the face. And now every single one of them was staring at the floor. Nobody said a word. 2 security guards stepped forward. They did not grab her roughly, but they were firm. They walked on either side of her like they had been told to make it look official. Mara handed over her badge. She emptied her locker into a paper bag. She walked down the long main corridor slowly, past the patients she had cared for, past the break room where she had eaten hundreds of lunches alone, past the room where she had once held a dying man's hand because no family had come for him. The front door slid open. Cold air hit her face. It was raining. She stood on the wet pavement outside and held her paper bag against her chest. For a moment, she just stood there, letting the rain fall on her. She did not cry. She did not move. She just stood and breathed. Then she pulled out her phone. There was already an email waiting. She opened it slowly. It was from a law firm she had never heard of. Cole Voss was suing her for $9 million, emotional distress and professional interference. She read it twice. Then she started walking. The next morning, Mara went to the grocery store. She picked up a few things she needed: baby food, bread, some fruit. When she got to the register and swiped her card, the machine beeped once. Declined. She tried again. Declined. She stepped away from the line and called her bank. The woman on the phone was apologetic but clear. All of her accounts had been frozen. A legal order had come through early that morning. Cole's team had moved fast. Mara carried her empty bags home. When she got to her front door, there was a yellow notice taped to it. She pulled it off slowly and read it standing in the hallway. An eviction notice. She was being removed from her apartment within 7 days. She went inside and sat down on her sofa in the dark. She did not turn on the lights. She put both hands on her belly and breathed slowly until the shaking stopped. She had worked so hard to build this life. 8 years on that floor, shift by shift, patient by patient. She had built something clean and honest and completely her own, something that had nothing to do with the world she grew up in. And it was gone. All of it. In a single afternoon. She sat with that for a long time. Then she stood up. She walked to her bedroom closet, moved a stack of boxes to one side, and found the small fireproof case sitting behind them. She had charged the phone inside it once a year. Every year, just in case had finally arrived. Her hands were steady as she opened the case and picked up the phone. She dialed the number she had memorized more than a decade ago. It rang once. Jaewon Seo picked up on the first ring. He already knew everything. He had been in that hallway. He had watched the slap happen in real time. He had watched her hands go to her belly. He had watched Dr. Webb walk in and choose a donor over his best nurse without a single moment of hesitation. He had walked out that side door, not because he did not care, but because Mara had made him promise years ago that he would never act unless she asked him to. He had spent the last 18 hours waiting. When her voice came through the phone, quiet and broken at the edges, he closed his eyes. "I need help," she said. That was all. "You do not have to say anything else," Jaewon said. His voice was the calmest it had ever been. "Go to sleep. I will handle it." He set the phone down on the glass table of his top-floor corner office. He looked out at the city lights spread below him. Then he picked up his other phone and made 5 calls. By morning, Cole Voss's problems had already begun. Cole Voss found out at dinner. He was at Harlow's, his members-only private dining club. Dark leather chairs, low lighting, the kind of place that did not put prices on the menu because the people who ate there never needed to ask. Cole had ordered 2 bottles of the most expensive wine on the list to celebrate. He was celebrating the fact that a pregnant nurse had been walked out of the building where he was supposed to be apologized to. When he placed his card on the tray, the waiter came back 2 minutes later with the look of someone who wished they worked anywhere else in the world. "I am sorry, sir," the waiter said quietly. "It has been declined." Cole snatched the card back. He told the waiter the machine was broken. He pulled out his phone to call his private banker and stopped. 6 missed calls were already on his screen. His stomach tightened. He stepped away from the table and called back. His banker picked up immediately and started talking fast. Cole listened without saying a word. His investment portfolio had dropped 23% in the last 3 hours. Every major fund he managed was bleeding. Investors were pulling out all at once, at the exact same time, like someone had given them all a single signal. Cole hung up and opened his banking app. His 4 offshore investment accounts were empty. Were not withdrawn, not transferred, just empty, like the money had never been there at all. His hands were cold. Then his head of security, a man who had worked for him for 12 years, got a text message. Cole watched him from across the room. He watched the man read it, watched the color drain completely from his face, watched him put his phone slowly into his pocket, stand up from his chair, and walk straight out of the club without saying a single word to Cole. Without looking back even once. Cole sat alone at the table, 2 untouched bottles of wine in front of him, and no way to pay for either of them. He spent the night trying to fix it. He had names, dangerous ones, men who had made very inconvenient problems disappear for very important people. He made calls from the back of a taxi and arranged 3 meetings before midnight. The first one was in a parking garage. Cole slid a bag of emergency cash across the hood of a car and showed the man what he had found taped to his front door when he got home that evening. A matte black envelope sealed with dark gold wax, stamped with the image of a black eagle, one wing open. The man looked at the envelope for a long moment. Then he pushed the cash back across the hood, got into his car, and drove away without saying a word. The second fixer did not even sit down. He saw the envelope in Cole's hand and shook his head before Cole could finish his first sentence. He walked away into the dark without looking back. The third man had a reputation for taking cases nobody else would touch. He sat down, looked at the envelope, then looked at Cole. He was quiet for a moment. "You hit someone you should never have touched," he said. "There is nobody in the city who will take this job. Not for any amount of money." "Why?" Cole demanded. The man looked at him with something between pity and disgust. "Because whoever sent that envelope does not negotiate," he said quietly. "He just collects." He stood up and left. Cole sat alone in the dark. He drove to his private airstrip on the east edge of the city at 2 a.m. He had a jet. He had cash. He had a plan. To get out of the country tonight, get somewhere without extradition, and rebuild from there. It was the only move he had left. He parked and got out of the car. The rain was coming down in heavy sheets. He grabbed his bag and walked fast toward the stairs of his jet. He was 40 feet away from the steps when the headlights hit him from every direction. With 3 black GMC Suburbans came out of the darkness at the edges of the airstrip. They moved fast and stopped hard, surrounding him completely. Cole froze. The doors opened. 8 men in black suits stepped out. No weapons were visible. No voices were raised. They moved with a cold and quiet efficiency that was somehow more frightening than anything Cole had ever seen. They took his arms. Someone pulled a thick, dark bag over his head. He tried to pull away, but there was no point. They put him in the back of one of the Suburbans and drove. Cole could not see anything. He could not hear anything except the rain and the sound of the engine. He counted the minutes in his head. 30 minutes later, the car stopped. Rough hands pulled him out and pushed him down onto his knees. The bag was pulled off his head. Cole blinked against the light. He was kneeling on a polished concrete floor inside a large private warehouse. The room was almost completely dark, except for a single light at the far end of a long table. Sitting there with a cup of tea and an expression of complete calm was the man from the hospital hallway. The black eagle tattoo was clearly visible on the left side of his neck. Jaewon Seo set his cup down slowly and looked at Cole Voss, the way someone looks at a problem they have already solved. Cole's instincts pushed him toward aggression. It was the only tool he had ever really known. When things got difficult, he pushed harder. He talked louder. He made people feel small. It had always worked before. He pulled himself up as straight as he could from his knees and looked across the long table at Jaewon Seo. "I have connections at the federal level," Cole said. His voice cracked slightly at the edges. "You have no idea who you are dealing with. When I get out of here, I will have you buried." Jaewon did not blink. He did not raise his voice. He did not shift in his chair. He simply reached forward and slid a tablet across the long table. It moved smoothly across the surface and stopped directly in front of Cole's knees. Cole looked down at the screen. It was the security camera footage from the trauma and emergency floor. Full resolution, time-stamped. It showed everything clearly. The moment Cole shoved Dr. Allaby into the wall, the screaming, the slap, Mara's head snapping sideways, her hands flying instantly to her belly, the security guards walking her out, Dr. Webb nodding at Cole like a man receiving good news. Every single second of it, captured perfectly. Cole stared at the screen and said nothing. Jaewon let the silence sit for a long moment, then he leaned forward slightly and spoke. His voice was quiet enough that Cole had to strain to hear it across the table. "You thought she was alone," Jaewon said. "You thought nobody was coming for her." "She has me." A lawyer stepped out of the shadows at the side of the room. He was carrying a thick stack of documents. He walked forward and placed them on the table directly in front of Cole without saying a word. Jaewon explained the terms without any emotion in his voice at all. Every asset Cole owned was to be signed over immediately. His private equity firm, his hedge funds, his properties, his vehicles, his financial licenses, and investment portfolios. The gym bag of emergency cash he had brought to the airstrip that night had already been collected the moment his men took Cole off the tarmac. Every single penny was going into a financial education trust fund for single mothers and their children. The legal structure had already been prepared. It was airtight. It could never be reversed. Cole's mouth opened. "You cannot do this," he said. "This is not legal. I will fight every single page of this." Jaewon looked at him calmly. "You are kneeling on a concrete floor in a warehouse at 3 a.m, he said quietly. "There is nobody coming for you. Sign the documents." Cole looked at the lawyer. The lawyer looked back at him without expression. Cole looked at the men standing in the shadows around the room. Not one of them moved. Not one of them spoke. He picked up the pen, and he sobbed as he signed. Real tears, the kind that do not come from guilt or regret, but from watching power leave your hands and knowing it is never coming back. Page after page after page, his name over and over again, on line after line, until everything he had spent 47 years building belonged to someone else. When the last page was signed and stamped, the men came forward again. They put the bag back over his head. They walked him out to the Suburban and drove. Cole sat in the back seat in the dark and did not say anything. 30 minutes later, the door slid open. 2 hands shoved him hard from behind. He hit wet pavement and rolled twice before stopping. He tore the bag off his head and looked up, gasping. Hospital emergency entrance signs glowed above him in the rain. It was the same hospital. Boy, he was in the exact parking lot where Mara Ellison had stood in the rain, holding a paper bag with her belongings, after being walked out of the only job she had ever loved. Cole sat on the wet ground with nothing but the clothes on his back. Then the police cars came. While Cole had been spending his nights trying to hire fixers and sleeping in the back of his car, Jaewon had been busy. He had gathered 10 years of Cole's financial records, tax evasion, embezzlement, wire fraud. All of it documented perfectly and delivered anonymously to 3 separate federal agencies. The patrol cars pulled into the parking lot one after another. Blue and red lights swept across the wet pavement. The officers stepped out slowly. Cole did not run. There was nowhere left to go. He sat in the rain with his hands at his sides and waited. For the first time in his life, Cole Voss had nothing to say. No card to play, no name to drop, no check to write. Just the rain and the flashing lights and the sound of his own breathing. The officers walked toward him, and it was over. That night, Cole Voss sat in the back of a police car with nothing but the wet clothes on his back. 4 months later, the morning sun came through the wide windows of the private maternity suite on the 9th floor. The room was warm and still. There were fresh flowers on the windowsill. Soft light fell gently across the bed. The only sound in the entire room was the quiet, steady breathing of a newborn baby girl. Mara Ellison sat up in the bed and held her daughter against her chest. She looked down at her face for a long time. Her daughter had her grandmother's nose and a full head of dark, soft hair. Where her lungs had announced her arrival to the entire floor when she came into the world, loud and strong and completely certain of herself. She was perfect. Mara looked up and out through the wide window at the city below. The sky was clear. The streets were busy with the ordinary movement of ordinary life. People walking, cars moving, the world going on exactly the way it always did. She breathed in slowly. It felt different now. Everything felt different. Jaewon Seo stood near the door with his hands folded in front of him. He was looking at his niece with an expression Mara had never seen on his face before. It was something open and unguarded and completely human. Like a part of him that had been locked away for a very long time had quietly decided to come forward. He had bought this hospital 4 months ago. He had done it quietly, through 3 separate shell companies, each one connected to the next in a way that took time to trace. The board of directors had no idea who the new owner was until the paperwork was fully finalized and filed. Then they found out. Dr. Raymond Webb had submitted his resignation letter the same afternoon the board informed him. It did not matter. The new ownership had already begun processing his termination before his letter even arrived. Dr. Webb was currently working 2 floors below. Not as a doctor. The janitorial team had been short-staffed for several weeks, and the new ownership had been kind enough to offer him a position. As Mara watched her daughter sleep, she heard a sound coming from the hallway, the slow, steady squeak of a mop bucket rolling across the floor. She looked up through the open door of her suite. She could see him moving slowly down the hallway, his eyes fixed on the floor in front of him. He looked older than she remembered, smaller somehow, like the months had taken something out of him that was never coming back. Dr. Raymond Webb pushed his mop bucket past the open door of her suite. He stopped. He looked in. He saw Mara sitting up in the bed, holding her daughter in the warm morning light. For 1 second, their eyes met. Then he looked away immediately and kept moving. The slow squeak of the mop bucket faded down the hallway until it disappeared completely. Mara did not call after him. She did not need to. She simply looked back down at her daughter's face. Jaewon crossed the room quietly and stood beside the bed. He looked at the baby for a long moment without saying anything. He studied her small fingers and her dark hair and the way she breathed so peacefully and steadily against Mara's chest. Then he looked at Mara. "You good?" he asked. Mara laughed. It was a small laugh, real and tired and completely genuine. The kind of laugh that carries a lot of weight behind it. "Yeah," she said. "I'm good." Jaewon nodded once, slowly, like that single answer had settled something heavy that he had been carrying quietly inside him for a very long time. Across the city, in a federal detention center downtown, Cole Voss sat on a metal bench in an orange jumpsuit. The private equity firm was gone, the hedge funds were gone, the properties, the vehicles, the financial licenses, the investment portfolios, all of it gone. The legal team that had frozen Mara's accounts and filed a $9 million lawsuit against her had stopped returning his calls the same week the federal charges landed. The investors were gone. The board was gone. The men who had laughed with him over expensive wine at Harlow's were gone. He had spent 47 years building a life where no was a word that other people said. Not him. Never him. Now he understood what happens when you are wrong about that. Mara kissed her daughter's forehead and breathed in the warmth of her. The storm was over. Not because Cole Voss had lost everything, though he had, completely. Not because Dr. Raymond Webb was mopping floors 2 levels below her, though he was. But because she was here, in this warm, quiet room with her daughter breathing softly in her arms and her brother standing quietly at the door. More in the world outside had no claim on her anymore. She had spent her whole life fighting for something normal, something clean and honest and completely her own. She had not realized until now that sometimes the people who love you are willing to fight for it too. She held her daughter a little closer and looked out at the city one last time. The quietest people in the room are never the weakest. They are just the ones who have not decided to move yet. Before you leave, you just watched how a powerful man lose everything he has, not because someone was stronger or has money than him, but because he forgot one simple truth, that the person you look down on today or the person you treat like trash today could be the very person who changes your life tomorrow. Cole had billions. Cole had power. Cole had influence. And he lost every single bit of it because he treated a quiet woman like she was nothing. So whatever position you are in right now, whatever power you are holding, remember Cole Voss. And remember Dr. Webb mopping floors in the same hospital he once ran. Power is not permanent, but how you treat people, that stays forever. So please be kind, be humble, and stay human, because the most dangerous person in any room is never the loudest one. Kindly drop a comment below. What was the biggest lesson you took from this story today?